how do you think that's shaped your view on stuff in general? But you also mentioned foreign policy specifically. So
All
how
right.
do you think it's influenced that?
Well, when it comes to foreign policy, I know being, I guess, in Asia Pacific specifically, I know that there's a lot of tensions in that area right now. And I feel like there are people, I mean, really everywhere that are too keen to start military actions for things. But I'm someone who actually thinks like, hang on a second, like I've been to that country, I have friends from that area. Let's think about this. Let's make sure they maintain their sovereignty. And I think if you don't have any personal connections, that can be hard to do. Not for everybody,
Mm,
but and it's also not meant to be a way as in like, oh, I know someone, therefore other countries should be able to get away with whatever they want. That's not it either. It's just that there's a very common narrative that's pushed when it comes to foreign policy that we need to be their saviors and that it's up to us and everyone will love us when we go there. But not only has history shown that that's not really how it works out. I think there are, if you put yourself in the perspective of that country, you wouldn't probably appreciate another country coming in
mm.
and meddling in your affairs. And we've seen that time and time again. So
Yeah.
with everything happening with, China and Hong Kong now, that's kind of where my mind is at. Like, whoa, hang on. Like I grew up in these places, and I'm not saying that because I, grew up there that China should be able to get away with whatever they want doing to Hong Kong. But it's also like maybe this isn't
Mm,
the best time to just start dropping bombs or sending in troops, which it's not like the Trump administration or anyone in a serious position has suggested, but
yeah.
there are a lot of people online anytime something happens where they're they're keen to say let's go all in and say, I don't
World
know about
police.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's complicated. That's one issue that I'm very undecided on.
Hmm.
It's a conversation I've had, quite a lot with friends and family, which is both on an individual level and on a nation level. What is the right balance between sort of minding your own business and not worrying or trying to control things that are sort of outside of your locus of control or even your sort of geographical region, and not, but also having that level of empathy and compassion and wanting to help and have concern about other things. I mean, it's not something people really talk about a lot explicitly, but we all know that if something happens, if something happens to a family member, that affects you, most strongly. If it
Hmm.
happens to like a friend, it's a tiny bit weaker. If it's someone on your street, it's still strong, but a little weak. And as you sort of move away geographically, we naturally, the human thing is to sort of shrug it off a little bit more. Like we all know terrible, horrible stuff goes on around the world all the time. And it's like if you spend all your time worrying about it, then you'll just end up sort of curled up in a little ball, like just crying, like the world is terrible, like everything is
Yeah.
awful, right? But at the same time, if you go completely to the other end, you become like totally apathetic. Like it's also not good to be totally apathetic and just be like, okay, yeah, like whatever, it doesn't affect me, so I don't care. Like a lot of people say that, oh, it doesn't affect me, why should I care? And I get that on one hand, but on the other side, I mean, we're in the midst of this situation right now. Okay, this thing's not currently anyway, it's not affecting me, but should I just not care about how it's affecting other people? You know what I mean? It's like that doesn't seem right. But at the same time, you've got people going all the way the opposite end, and they're going crazy, and they're
Yeah.
freaking out because I don't know. And I feel the same kind of applies to countries themselves. Like what's that right balance? Because it doesn't seem right. Like if there's real abuses going on in somewhere, or say, at an extreme, there's like a genocide or something happening in another country, should the other
Hmm.
countries kind of just sit back and be like, oh, well, it's not our business? Like that also doesn't seem right. I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
No, you're right. It's really, really hard. And a lot of people like to pretend that it's black and white when it's not. I mean, the Rwandan genocide, most people, it's kind of widely acknowledged that the international community should have
Yes.
stepped up there. Something should have been done. But where I think it gets really, really complicated is that when you have almost these civil wars, right, where there's internal strife
Mm,
within a nation, what whose side are you supposed to come down on if you do decide to intervene?
yeah.
Right. And we kind of saw this in Syria, Western countries were very keen to see Assad out, but then you go to the ground and talk to Syrian people, and it seems like, okay, well, the majorities are supportive of him, but he's, he obviously does have human rights issues. So it's like, is it our responsibility to just depose this ruler and try to set up other elections until someone else whose rule we can sign off on is elected? Because in South America, previous generations, when the CIA did that, it was not well received. So what is the right play? And I think in the Middle East, we have an issue where, it's not just different political factions, they're actually enduring ideologies that are causing a lot of the violence. Is it our responsibility to sort of re-educate populations there in order to stop that extremism? How committed, how far do we need to go? Do we need to be there for 20 years, 30 years? It's not easy. And there's going to be people, regardless of what you do, who are saying, you are letting these people die, it's your fault, right? And whether you go there or not, because if you don't go there, you're apathetic, you're being too passive. If you do go there, there's going to be collateral damage. You're going to be seen as a foreign invader. That's just unavoidable. It's not easy, but what does frustrate me is the number of people who I see giving, these really hot takes, and, civilians and politicians included, who don't know anything about the area. That's really frustrating to me. I spent my entire time getting my degree studying the Iraq region and a bit of the Levant, and anytime something with the Middle East comes up, it's amazing how many people on Twitter turn into foreign policy experts. It's like, I've spent years learning about this stuff. I don't even know. And you're kind of spouting off as if it's this simple. It's not.
I do not scam. Put some respect on my name. Sick like a